Welcome, everybody. This is our second episode of Real Leaders, Real Connection. And the idea is to get to know each other coming out from behind the mask of Facebook that allows us, and LinkedIn and other social media, that allows us to just present whatever we want in a more, I say in a more hidden way, because we can choose what we present and we can choose what we show the world. And in this way, when we have a real conversation, we actually get to know the real person, real stories, and we all have fascinating life stories to share, and that's my passion. So today, I'm welcoming Sharon Jansen. I'm so excited to have you here, a dear friend and colleague. Hi, Sharon.
Hello, Daphna. So nice to be here.
Yeah, and I'm excited to have this conversation with you. So I'm going to start with my usual question, which is, what is one story or highlight that you would like to share with us today from your life?
Yeah, so I've shared this with a number of people because it was really quite an important turning point or inflection point in my life and in my development as an adult, I believe. I spent 30 years in one of the big corporates in South Africa in financial services, and I often say 30 amazing years. I thrived in the corporate environment. I loved it. It just offered me so many opportunities to move around and do different things. I used to jokingly say that I tried to stay ahead of police file. I got to work in so many different parts of the business. I was also hugely effective, one of those people who really gets things done. But due to, I suppose you would say, the role modeling that I had in the early years, not many female role models 40 years ago, mostly male, and not what kind of role modeling we would really like to see in leadership. Leadership was very different back then. It was command, control, authoritative, and that was how I had developed as a leader as well. Anyway, in the sort of late 90s, I found myself working for a woman who'd come to our organization on a secondment from one of the big card issuers in America. And she is a black American woman, and Americans are very forthright. They grow up very differently to South Africans. And we had a really good relationship. It came performance review time, and she, like most people, had reinforced how good I was at what I did. And she said to me, and this is as far as you will go until you learn how to deal with people better. This was the first person who'd given me feedback so forthrightly, and who'd actually had the courage to tell me that, because most people shied away, because I still can be very intimidating. Anyway, I was shattered. I mean, she knew the currency, which was my ambition. But I walked out of there and I literally felt...
To hear that mirrored for you, this is as far as you'll go. That's a strong message. That's a very strong feedback to get.
Yes. And I've always been someone who's up for a challenge. And that was a direct challenge. I was saying, that will be the day. But I guess the tough thing for me was I didn't know what to do, because I only knew one way of being. I didn't know another way. And I started looking and researching, and what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And I came across the first international emotional intelligence conference. It was being held in Chicago in 1998. And I got quite excited. I started to read a little bit about emotional intelligence. And my biggest excitement was that you could actually learn this thing. You didn't have to be born with it. Anyway, the manager at that time was wonderfully supportive, and she sent me off to that conference. And I was fortunate to hear people like Daniel Goleman and I can't even remember their names. A lot of people who are the thought leaders in emotional intelligence. It wasn't emotional intelligence that was new. It was emotional intelligence in the workplace that was new. And so I came back really excited, very motivated. I heard people like David White for the first time. I heard John Kabat-Zinn for the first time. And so I came back and I set about working with my own emotional intelligence. And I guess to some extent coaching myself.
Yeah.
Because coaching wasn't a conversation in South Africa at that time. You know, before 2000, there was very little available. Anyway, long story short, I got very excited about, over the following 3 or 4 years, very excited about the changes that I had brought about in myself. The different responses I was getting from people. And that people, although they had worked for me, probably with a little bit of reluctance, but wanting to be in the limelight, because I've always had the limelight because of my achievements, people now wanted to work for me. I had a completely different relationship with the people in my team.
That's I would imagine, a complete change from being maybe intimidating, strong, command and control, do what I say, people probably being a little bit hesitant to join your team, maybe excited to join because of the challenge and working with a high achiever. I think there's some of that, but moving into really wanting to work with you because of your leadership approach.
Yes, and you know, one of the significant changes was just my way of I guess, control, if you like. I was always very controlling. I remember doing a Belbin assessment many years ago, and it said that in terms of my profile, that I always believed that Murphy was alive and well, and I would head him off at the pass. So I was always one step ahead to make sure everything was going to go well. With the result that I was probably quite micromanaging at the time and in everyone's face. And so that was one of the big things, was I let people go and I let them make mistakes. But I told them very clearly, everyone knew the message, I don't do surprises well. If something's going to go wrong, let me know well in advance. Anyway, it really started me, why I said it was an inflection point. It was the start of my adult development stage, my growing self-awareness, my ability that I had other ways of being, my knowledge that I had other ways of being, and my learning how to access them.
Yeah. So let me ask you, Sharon, because I think a lot of people watching this, I still know for sure today people grapple with exactly that issue. Is, you know, I'm a great leader, super achiever, but the way I treat people is a little bit lacking in emotional intelligence. So could you share, like, maybe what was the first thing that you did that you noticed really gave you those results and that turnaround point? Maybe just something that people can learn from.
Yes, I learned to listen.
I love that. That's my favorite. Whenever anybody asks me what's the most important leadership quality, I always say listening. Oh, thank you. Yeah.
I learned to listen. You know, I had a reputation. I believe some people said that my nickname was Jaws. But don't come into my office if you haven't got your ducks in a row, because you will go out face forward. And so I worked on that, and so that people were not that afraid to come in, that they were not afraid to ask. So I learned to listen. In fact, someone I worked for at the time sent me a little like a poem thing that I'll actually share with you so you can put it on the group. And it was about this listen to me. So a big example was, because I was well connected, 2 people came into my office to tell me about a problem. And as they sat down, they said, if you pick up the phone to go higher up, we're not going to tell you the story. So I had to leave the phone and listen to them and let them tell me how they wanted to resolve it without me, getting on the phone to the big deals to solve this thing my way. So I learned to listen. I learned to really hear what people were saying. So I was giving people a voice that I hadn't done before. There was only one voice, and it was mine.
Yeah, amazing.
That was probably one of my biggest learnings.
That's such an awesome story to share.
And so that really started me on the path of being a coach.
Yeah. Okay. So
if you heard me there.
Yeah, I did. Started you on the path of being a coach. So Sharon, how would you say, maybe in just the essence of, how do you think that changed you as a person? Because I think leadership is one thing and how we are at work is one thing, but if we don't bring our whole selves to our leadership and our work, we're holding ourselves back and our leadership is not as extraordinary as it can be. So how did it change you? What is the essence of if you can share, if you can think about that?
I think the essence is simply, it sounds simple, but it isn't simple. Is that I moved from being the person with the loudest voice to being the person that only spoke when I needed to.
Wow. And that must have been hard.
Very hard. And what I realized was that I didn't need to say as much as I said, because people knew that I knew. But it was me that, it was my need.
Wow.
To be heard. People knew that I knew.
Wow. Oh, that is...
So really, that's the biggest change for me, is that I know when to weigh in and when to listen.
I love what you do. For me, I've just got goosebumps, because if we can understand that when we're good at what we do, people know that, and we don't need to constantly verbalize and show that, and actually take it to the next level where our contribution is on a much deeper, much higher level. And that need to talk is not because people need to hear, it's because we need to hear. That is such a key and very deep, profound, in my opinion, insight. Thank you, Sharon. Wow. Awesome. So I'd like to end with a lighter question.
Pleasure.
And that is, where do you live in the world, and what do you love about living in your city?
So I live in Johannesburg, in South Africa.
Yeah.
I'm born and bred in Johannesburg. It's in my blood and in my veins. And I have 4 grandchildren. 2 of them are adults and 2 of them are littlies. And I'm very fortunate to be in this phase of my life now, where I can spend more time with the little ones than I was able to spend with the adult grandchildren when they were that age. So they take up a big part of my life, and I work as a coach, and I work 3 days a week with clients, and the other days are mine. So I have a designer life, and I actually retired from corporate in 2005. So I've been retired now for going on 15 years.
Amazing.
But I haven't stopped working.
Yeah. And we know that, and you continue to do amazing work, and we certainly appreciate having you in our community. So thank you, Sharon. It was wonderful to speak to you.
Thank you.
Thanks for taking the time and sharing your story.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to talk about myself.